I'm John Shaw. Welcome to Third Side, where we navigate popular culture through Black Flame.
I'm Jared McGhee, and our topic today is social justice warriors, snowflakes, pseudos, and posers. John, who's our guest tonight?
Our guest tonight is Alder Strauss. He's a warlock in the Church of Satan, and he's an expert dabbler in all things focusing on society and Satanism. Welcome to the show, Alder.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you for coming on. Listen, first question right off the bat, what is going on in the world, Alder?
Oh man, a lot of craziness. Honestly, it just seems to be everywhere now from all angles, and it's so hard to just focus on one thing without being torn to another. I mean, really, where do you begin? So
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Where do you begin?
Yeah.
So what comes to mind first when we start thinking of social justice warriors?
Oh, well, I mean, we can start with the definition. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are introduced to the social justice warrior definition or acronym SAW through a lot of these protests. I think first and foremost, a lot of it is just what you see on campus happening in a lot of liberal kinds of colleges, where you have a lot of people who get up in arms about what it seems to be just the smallest amount of things. You hear like trigger warnings usually follow that, safe spaces, microaggressions. But really, long story short, the social justice warrior is somebody I feel that looks for a cause to fight for and an oppressive entity to fight against for the overall perceived betterment of everybody.
Is it for everybody?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
that's really subjective. I mean, it certainly doesn't. It's certainly not something that could be agreeable for everybody. Definitely. I mean, that's probably why we're having this show. Is that there's a lot of contention between what is happening with these social justice warriors and what the people that don't agree with their methods, are coming back at them about. Are raising arms about, if you will.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then, mentioning, is it for everyone? Realistically, you can't. I'm not even sure how to phrase it. We're going for something here, and yet you can't please everyone. So how would you possibly make some sort of a stand when half of the people out there might disagree completely with you?
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the contention. But then again, there's almost like a push pull yin yang kind of thing when you have just about every topic. I think one of the biggest issues with social justice warriors is the way that they approach these things. Like it's a very ideological kind of mindset, whereas I feel a lot of them, and I don't want to speak for any of them, but just the way they present themselves is that they tend to be of a young age group, and they come in and they're very impressionable. And unless this is the reason why a lot of it's happening at campuses, because they get into these liberal environments where these professors are like, well, colonialization, women have been subjugated, and so they see that there's these important aspects of like feminism and equal rights and that kind of thing. But then they just take it and they just develop it as like a runaway train. So anything that seems to be as a blockade to that, they don't try to understand that blockade. They just smash through it without even wanting to listen to it. And so the betterment for everyone is that, well, if all women from all backgrounds and all cultures and all wage, wage ranges and that kind of thing, if they all worked and went under this one banner, this one cause, it would be better for everyone. All women or all this other thing, and all people of this age or all people of this religion or all people of this, whatever. And so if we made it so there's like a level playing field for all these people, everyone would benefit. Everyone would understand them. Everyone would wake up. These oppressive forces would stop keeping them down, and we'd all be better for in the long run.
Right.
Oppressive laws would change. It'd be like a bright new sunshiny day kind of thing. So
Do you think, like you said earlier, it's the younger crowd that's doing this? Do you think it's because of their sense of entitlement? Does that have anything to do with their need to be social justice warriors?
Could you elaborate on entitlement, maybe?
Probably not, but.
Okay. Well,
because the kids today, they're coddled. These millennials and things like that, they're coddled, and they're thinking that everyone is special and everyone has a right to win, and everybody gets the trophy, no matter whether they played or not. So that type of thing, do they feel? Well, I'm special. I'm Johnny Two-Time. I can do whatever I want, and it gives them this sense of being a social justice warrior. It makes it okay for them. Do you think that have some truth to it or no?
I see what you mean by entitlement. You mean by like equity, like they, just because they're in the race, they need to have some sort of recognition, even if they're like 12th place kind of thing, or everything's gotta come up roses, and they can get like, they can maybe not work as hard as the other person getting the A, but they at least want maybe an A, but it can be a different color. Like the mark can be a different color, or I honestly think a lot of the issue is that they just haven't been subjected to the reality that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Or they just flat out deny it.
Yeah.
Or they deny it, or they have. I mean, when it comes to it, I think it's their parents' responsibility who've been like, okay, life's not always fair. Life's going to throw you down the dirt. But it's up to you to pick yourself up and dust off and keep going. I mean, or seriously, the worst thing you could ever do in life, in any avenue, any field, is just to give up.
Yeah.
But there might be even a worse thing, and that's ignoring the reality that sometimes life doesn't work in your favor.
So maybe the problem is they're not taught these things by their parents.
Yeah.
It starts in the household.
Yeah, and I think most things wouldn't it?
I think you got a point there, both of you. I think that's pretty right on. I mean, parents. I'm not a parent myself, so I can't really speak for parents. But with my upbringing, I was never told that I'm always a winner. I was encouraged to do things, and a lot of what I found was that I wasn't popular. At some point, I was picked on quite a bit. But now looking back and reflecting on that, I'm like, okay, there's a reason for that. And it's like, well, don't give a fuck what people think about you. Prove them wrong by being the best you can be. Give it 110%. And you're gonna win, you're gonna lose sometimes, but learn the lesson and apply that better the next time. And I think there's that fundamental piece of the puzzle that's missing with these. And I think that part of it's just like part of the catalyst of what goes on from there.
And we talk about these social justice warriors, and I always like to differentiate that from the civil rights and the civil liberties era. Mm-hmm. So what kind of things do you think are being taught now to these people that have social justice warriors so up in arms about what seems in many cases to be nothing versus 40 and 50 years ago when there was some blatantly wrong things that needed to be corrected? What do you think the difference is between now and then?
You're thinking like civil rights era, Jim Crow days, say maybe.
Yeah, I mean, when they did things at a college campus, no one looking back would deny, and maybe time is a factor here, but realistically, what was the burning at college? What happened at Berkeley? What was that all about? And does that even deserve to be in the same conversation as what was happening in the 50s and 60s? You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I think it's explicit versus what they perceive as, I guess you could say, implicit. I mean, back in the days, there definitely was laws on the books. After the civil rights movement, and then Jim Crow was starting to be dismantled in the mid-50s, and then Martin Luther King picked up in the 60s, and there was a civil rights movement. And Martin Luther King was saying, let's not make it a thing of black supremacy. Let's not attack people who are white. Let's not scapegoat them. Let's make our protests nonviolence. Let's go out there and lead by example, and let's make it so that let's desegregate things and make it so that kids of all color can be in the same schoolroom and have the same opportunity education. I think a lot of that's been lost nowadays. And back in the day, it was explicit. You know, you had like the Voting Rights Act, and then there was what was the other one? I think
The
it was
other
like
one, yeah.
there was like the Civil Rights Statement or something. I forget the exact law name, but those were in the mid '60s that came about. And then the Jim Crow laws, that was really the tail end of that. And then that was where it was explicit, where there's laws on the book that said you can be fined if you date or marry a person of color, if you're white, or if you use the same fountain as somebody that has it marked for them and not you, so on, so on and so forth. But now, I believe what's happening is they're taking all that stuff, and like if somebody says the N word now on a campus or on a speech, like you hear the book. Huckleberry Finn has been banned because of his, its use of the N word. Like I think there's like 200 times it's been used, even though that was a product at the time when it was prominent. So
Right.
they look at a teacher's teaching this book. Nowadays a teacher's teaching this book. He's purporting a racist agenda. He hates black people. He's not sympathetic to black students in the class, even though it's a book of history. And so what they're doing now is they see this past, and they're trying to take these explicit elements of history and assuming there's an implicit force that's going to become an explicit thing again. I think it's that ignorance and fear that's starting to manifest nowadays, and they feel that it's like a slippery slope into some kind of, like, as they like to throw the word around, fascist kind of regime where they're going to be stomped and trampled on, or their friends are going to be deported, or their other friends are going to be, beaten up in the street for the color of their skin.
I think the only thing getting trampled on is our First Amendment. That's probably the only thing that's really getting trampled on with
Pretty much.
behavior. Yeah, I mean, it's like they don't realize the impact of what they're doing, how big it is or what it can do. Everything's being attacked. You can't say anything now. You can't say things because you're going to offend someone.
And on top about that, there's this rage that's coming along, and then they're out here, they're worried about what's being said, they're angry about what's being said, and then they kick it up to that next level. They start throwing rocks and flipping cars and setting things on fire. And I can't help but think, do you want the amendments to be abolished? Because the more you loot and the more you riot, the more ammo you're going to give people and give the government to come in and restrict it further.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I looked at some Facebook threads, like the whole trending news thing, and you click on that. There's a bunch of posted articles, and you can read the comments and the goings back and forth. And some people's defense to the whole riots and protests and whatnot have been, well, the First Amendment is the government can't interfere with freedom of speech, and that's true. However, a lot of amendments do have an implicit, and we're kind of against this word right now, but it's saying, but you can't really interfere with another person's right to say something. And other people have said, well, it's a college campus, it's a government institute, so vicariously through that, it would still apply. But let's look at the issue where you brought it, Jared, concerning the, not just protesting, but throwing of rocks, burning, even like violence and assault on other
property, anything.
Yeah.
And destroying property is obviously it's an illegal act. So when we come down to it, when we cut through it all, we're looking at the fact that it's okay. I feel it's okay to protest. You can protest all you want. You can raise a stink, but the things you can't do is oppress other people's or infringe on other people's rights to have, access to other people's opinions. Which is an actual. It is a fascist. It is a fascist element.
Imagine that.
These people yelling fascism.
Fight fascism with fascism, I always say.
Yeah, and you obviously you cannot throw rocks, and I think somebody threw like some Molotov cocktails, and that's really fucking dangerous. Or you can't, punch somebody for having a different belief, just because they have a different belief. I mean, that's when it crosses the line.
You just reminded me of something. We have questions from
that's right.
some of our viewers and stuff, and this is a perfect time to ask this. When you mentioned punching, what's your opinion? Josh Armenta wants to know. Thanks, Josh, for your questions. What is your opinion on the current rhetoric that says it's okay to physically assault people considered Nazis, i.e. Richard Spencer?
It's not. Simple answer, it's not okay. I mean, are you really that threatened by somebody else's speech? I mean, like, if the guy came into your house, said, well, me being a Nazi means I get to beat you and harm your kids and, take your wife and all this other stuff, yeah, then you might, not you might, obviously you would have grounds for punching him because it is self-defense, but just because somebody is I think it happened in, like, the streets, right? I saw the video, and it, like, happened in just a public sphere, but regardless of public or private, it's not okay to hit somebody because they have a different ideology than you, even if it's a really hateful, destructive one.
Yeah, and realistically, when we're looking at this, we're talking about things people are saying. It's not like it's 1775 and they're coming, they are coming to kill you or arrest you. This isn't the colonial war, we're not rebelling against anyone. We're disagreeing with someone in a large group of people. That's what we're doing. We're disagreeing with an idea. And you don't take it past a certain point.
Right. I agree. There's limits. I mean, because then it's a two-way street. So if you can punch somebody for being a Nazi, can they punch you for being a liberal or a conservative or a neutral? I mean, it's like if you're okay with that, shouldn't you punch them and accept the consequences of them being able to do the same to you? If that's what you want to do, and then take that, spend the time in jail because that's what's going to happen.
So his second question was, what about the concept of no free speech for fascists? This kind of fit into the whole thing there.
No free. I mean, again, it's a two-way street. I mean, fascists have, every right in this country to say that we don't want to hear from this particular colored person, or this particular newspaper should be censored, or this group's an idiot, or women or men this. Like it's words. The whole sticks and stones has seemed to be forgotten for the fact that words tend to be like an atom bomb now, as opposed to just like getting scratches and bruises on stick and stone. So
yeah,
it seems to be.
A case in point, this recent thing with Milo Snuffleupagus or whatever his name is.
Yiannopoulos, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Smurfopoulos. He was.
Metropolis.
All he was doing was going to have a talk, and he was giving this speech or talk to people that wanted to hear him talk, yet it was shut down by fascists, right? Is that what? Did I get that right?
It was. I think it was like a president or a spokesperson of the university who had authority over. Because he was invited by. I think he's always been invited by like political clubs and groups on the campus that sympathize with his speech, or it could, whoever, it doesn't matter who, even people who are opponents of him could invite him as a speaker from another view.
Yeah.
But the point is, he was invited. People like him, Ben Shapiro, Christina Hoff Sommers, and like even Larry Elder and some other people who are quite unpopular with these radical leftists because they speak in facts and statistics, right? But that's we can address that later. But
that's an F word, by the way. Fact. That's an F word. Yeah. Just keep that in mind.
It's also a 4-letter word, literally. So, but back to what we're saying is that he was invited, and shutting him, he was shut down because it grew violent, because people's safety was put in jeopardy, and that's just disgusting. It's just terrible to, because again, back to the whole, should free speech be not allowed for fascist people? Well, I feel that it's doing people worse, a disjustice or a disfavor of silencing another person's opinion, because then how do you know what he's saying, and how can you prepare to say, quote unquote, fight against him? I feel that he should be as welcome as anyone else. It's up to the discretion of the university whether or not they want to have him up there. He's not entitled, or he shouldn't have an automatic right to be there if he's not invited. He can't just walk up and say, I demand space and now I'm going to talk. He has to be invited, and that's all he is. He's invited, and he goes, and he tries to speak. People hear of it. People assume all this hate speech coming from him. Then they protest. They block people from going in and seeing the event, and then violence has ensued.
It seems like anymore we've got two types of protesters. We've got the kinds that are going to go out and pretty much destroy half of everything, and then we've got the kind who are going to protest from Facebook and never get off their couch. No one seems to go out there and just hold their sign anymore. You're either throwing a rock or you're, posting articles about why it's wrong.
Well,
the keyboard warrior.
Yeah, keyboard warrior. I mean, a lot of the ones at the protests, the same thing with Donald Trump, is a lot of people that were protesting were just holding signs out in the street. But the ones that are radical, and even some of the ones that even weren't invited or weren't really taking sides, some people just go and they see all this stuff happening, and then they use it as an excuse to go out there and destroy things. I think what they're called, like black bloc. I
think black bloc. I thought it was.
Yeah,
I thought so.
Because they dress up and they look like ninjas,
Yeah, that's the one that had
and they go in and
Nazi
destroy
guy.
things. Yeah,
they look like ninjas and they act like Beverly Hills ninjas.
Yeah, they go in and destroy things, and they're like, it's the most cowardless. It's the most cowardless thing to do is to come in all masked up, all concealed, incognito, and then destroy something and then run the hell away.
Pretty much.
It's like,
we used to call them wimps when we were growing up. They'd be like, fuck you, and run down the road. You're like, you.
Right. I hope something really ironic happens to them. I think that would be great.
Like they slide under a gas truck and taste their own blood?
Yeah, sure.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, so to answer your question, Jerry, I think it's in a great minority that these protesters that protest Trump and Milo and others are actually committing crimes. I think a lot of them like to make a lot of noise and like to make a lot of ironic cardboard signs, and then that's the end of it. But
so essentially what we've learned is social justice warriors are dumb. Is that accurate?
I think that's pretty close. I would say that there's a few
I'm being facetious.
Who are really up for the causes, but aren't really emotionally reactionary, because a lot of the problem with social justice warriors is a big underlying thing is that they're easily, as they say, triggered. They get all emotional and all riled up on something, and they forsake thought for action, and they don't even think of the consequences of what they do.
Yeah.
So I don't like to say every one of a certain group acts a certain way, because
Right.
they've been proved wrong many, many times. So even with them, even with the most irritating amount of people or group of person, I will always give them the benefit of doubt because I'm kind of a nice guy like that. But that's my...
That's where
I would almost differentiate social justice warriors as different than actual, activist protesters. Social justice warriors, they're the ones that always strike me as just yelling to hear themselves yell. And the fact that we have a vice president, who is pretty much a creationist now. I'm already getting a spam email from Freedom from Religion Foundation and various other things that are, he hasn't even done anything yet, and they're up in arms about it. And I'm not going to say I'm not concerned about having someone in that position, but
Yeah. I think it's a concern, but you need to go into it, and you still need to go into it thinking. You're like, okay, here's his position on this.
Is that word thinking?
Yeah, right. It seems to be such a fleeting concept, right? And study not worship tends to be the better thing to approach anything with, as I've found. Since we want to throw in a relevant, thing in here, study not worship is definitely would probably be the underlying moral of this episode, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this applies to everything that we're going to be speaking about. Let's change it up, because I think we've talked enough about social justice warriors. I always say that laughing. I don't know why. Snowflakes. What about some snowflakes? What is a snowflake, Alder?
Snowflake is something that happens when it's cold. No, oh, the other snowflake.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
right.
two of them.
Uh, they tend
That was my snowflake.
the little.
Yeah, I did it there.
Well, they tend to be the really overly sensitive folk that melt under any kind of heat of disagreement or oppositional force.
Trampled under cloven hoof. Yeah.
Well, definitely, they can definitely melt under the friction of that. That's for sure.
So, what is it about them that I don't even know what to ask or to start with that? Why are they hurt so easily?
How would they even get their voice?
Hurt them? Why? What is that?
You know?
What?
Well, I think the thing that honestly, this seems to be a good continuous flow from what we're talking about at the beginning with the definition of social justice warriors. I mean, it's definitely relevant, tied in. I think it's the fact that they're afraid of being challenged. I think they're afraid of being challenged and having to actually go to a source that might prove them wrong. It's like a religious person who, you try to disprove the Bible, say to a diehard Christian, and you can easily do it with certain passages, but they just won't see the facts that are there. They'll continue to hold on to that security blanket of misinformation or assumed facts. So with these snowflakes, they are really passionate about something. They're really passionate about the environment, or they're really passionate about helping out oppressed peoples or minorities, or preserving a culture. And they're, even if somebody comes up to saying, hey, there's a way that we can improve this culture that's a bit new, it's a bit different from how they were before, but no, because that's going to destroy this, or that's going to happen here. Or it says that this amount of person commits a crime, but it is proved here based on, say, Department of Justice statistics that the opposite, in fact, is true. No, I don't want to hear about that, because that just means that, my passion is all for naught. Or, now I have to rethink something. Okay, what? No. Because I'm so passionate, I'm so emotionally invested in this, that I don't want to see myself going bankrupt because of some dissenting opinion that actually holds more water. I want to keep my bucket as full as I can, even though there's a big fucking hole in the bottom. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I think that sums up what they are coming from.
Well, I think one of the things that gets me about really all of these is the fact that they're not wrong, that there are things that can be improved on, but it's their implementation that really just distracts from whatever it is they're trying to say.
I agree. I think it's great to be passionate about something, but you should be patient. You should be patient with your passion. You should look into it. You're like, okay, I'm really passionate about this idea, but okay, in the field of business, just because you're passionate about an idea doesn't mean that the idea in itself might be good, but the way you want to implement it may just be way too costly, or it can go any other way where it's just not a good thing to go down. So you might have to approach it a different way, or find out something else that's out there that may make it be like, well, that idea doesn't really hold water. So maybe if you took that passion and put it someplace that does, and that would work better for you.
Hi, this is Magister Robert Johnson. I'm the author of The Satanic Warlock, a book you probably heard quite a bit about. We've had unprecedented success with this book, and warlocks throughout the world are clamoring for more and more information. The book is just the beginning. The book is just the jumping off point, a primer, so to speak, for warlocks all over the world to gain knowledge, magical knowledge, satanic knowledge. The Satanic Warlock website, which will premiere probably within the next couple of months, is going to offer the next level of information. We will expand upon all areas, including power and seduction, and just what it means to be a man in this post-politically correct era that we're now living in. This book was just the beginning. So jump on over to the satanicwarlock.com, sign up for the new information, and to be one of the first to join the website. You won't be disappointed.
Pseudos and Posers. We'll lump them together. We've got a few questions from our viewers to talk about pseudos a little bit here.
Sure.
I'm going to switch it up here with David S. He asks, what are your thoughts about the fact that most people, even after 51 years, still don't understand what Satanism is, even ones that call themselves Satanists? What are they missing? That's pretty...
I like that. I get that a lot, so I'm curious to hear what you think, Alder.
Yeah.
I think part of it's cultural. I think, and part of it could be entitlement too. Like, there's out there in the different kinds of people that call themselves Satanists. There's those that are like, well, you can't define it by a certain establishment, and since it's an individualistic religion, it's whatever you put into it. So there's that aspect of it. There's also a cultural kind of thing where, you have people that are they're Christians or they've grown up with the devil's always the boogeyman, there's always the evil person, and that's all it'll ever be. So anything that has sympathy towards it is automatically the Antichrist. So you have those that deny, okay, even though you have so much knowledge out there, you still have people like, even there's so much knowledge out there. Take, for example, the media. Take, for example, these so-called journalists, like that say come to the Church of Satan, and they ask for interviews, and they have all this information. They still ask, is it about worshiping the devil? And as I've heard in interviews, the first thing that that Central does is refer them to the frequently asked questions. And they still, after that, they still ask.
I don't want to read.
Yeah, oh my God, no.
I want you to explain it for the 7,000th time.
Yeah, Megas Peter Gilmore has even said, I'm sure he said in interviews before, correct me if I'm wrong, but he said, hey, you still have people that come to the site, and they just, they go right past the FAQ, and they just go right to the contact. And he says it's right up there, right next to each other for a very distinct purpose. And he's like, no, just go right back to the FAQ, because 90% of the questions they ask are answered there.
Yeah.
So I think that's really why people are still not getting it after 51 years. Is either they don't want to, or they're too lazy to, or they feel that it's what's around is bunk, and they can do it better themselves.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the issue also stems from the fact that there's this growing belief that atheism equals more intelligent. And if you go into any of the most remote atheist groups, you'll see this, we're me smarter than Christian man. So obviously, if I don't believe in your sky daddy, I don't need to worship your ground troll. And it's like, whoa, it's like, time out.
Yeah.
50 years, guys, 50 years. I mean, go to Google, and I mean, it's not hard to find out that we're atheists. It's just not.
Well, yeah, I mean, because they have a knee-jerk reaction to anything that calls itself a religion. It doesn't matter if it's like completely in sync and in line and supportive of what their worldview or is, like atheism, and that's why it's been clarified. It's like, well, Satanism starts as atheism, but what several members have stated is that, well, and they've done it in explanations and answering questions that you've posed in group, or the situations that you just stated, Jared, in group, is that they're like, well, atheism is making a statement of what isn't, what I'm not. I don't believe I don't see evidence for deity or polytheistic representation out there, so I'm not going to choose to believe it until I see the facts. They start with what isn't, but Satanism starts with what is. I am a Satanist. I hold an atheistic view, but as Megas Gilmer has said, and placed it along in tiers of progression of identification, is that, well, you go from that, I'm an atheist, I question things, I don't believe that, man's created his own God, et cetera, to I'm an atheist. I create my own future, my own life, my own being here now. I'm the God of my conceptual universe. I am an atheist, and they just get stuck on the whole religion thing. That Satanism as a religion equals, Christian like slaves, or sheep, black sheep followers, whatever they want to call it.
You've mentioned the media earlier.
Right.
David's second question was, do you feel the media plays a huge part in perpetuating the misconception of Satanism for their own agenda, as in keeping the masses misinformed?
That's a good question. Good job, David.
Yeah, it's a given. You'll see things that are completely inaccurate all the time, and not just in Satanism, just because like the whole no news is good news. It's like, well, no, to a lot of media outlets, no accurate information is good, because other members in the past have said, well, if people knew what Satanism really was about, they'd be bored. Because it's not about devil worship. It's not about this Hollywood aggrandization of bloody orgies and rituals, and so of course they're going to perpetuate things to get people. The term clickbait comes to mind, to get people, to get that traffic, so that they can keep their ad revenue going, and so on and so forth. The marketing technique, if you will.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because I love that you said that they would be bored, because I've told my friends who aren't members, I go, do you know what the very last thing we talk about when we do get together is? Satanism. It's almost the last thing we bring up, because we're all so busy and we have so many different things going on that are so interesting and so fascinating that we almost don't discuss the thing that brought us here together. Like when we were in New York, we were so busy.
We're there to celebrate and indulge. We don't talk shop. We hardly talk shop there.
Yeah. We get together and it's, what have you been up to? Oh, I'm working on this paper. I've got this project. I've been doing this in the shop. And it's like, we don't sit around and start reciting the Satanic Bible to each other. Knowing it is what got us here.
Like a lot of members, and I'm not surprised by it, but others would be. It's like, I honestly, I know the rules of the earth. I know the sins. I know the statements. But I don't necessarily know their order, or I can't put them all. I can't spout them all out. Off the top of my head right now. It doesn't make me less of a Satanist. It just makes me.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. What you do?
A pop quiz.
Oh, pop quiz. Oh, okay. I see. Let me stretch over to my bookshelf for a second. All right.
Smooth.
Josh.
Look over there, Jared.
Yeah. Josh, his last question is great. He says, what do you think pseudos mean when they say that the COS no longer reflects the work of Anton LaVey, or that the philosophy in the Satanic Bible needs to evolve with the times?
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite arguing points online. This is my theory, but I feel that it's through the conversations I've been part of and observed, is that, well, it's almost like an out with the old, in with the new kind of thing. It was done in the 60s, and granted the 60s was a different kind of cultural time, but I think what they forget is that, this is a religion based on human nature, and human nature, even though we have new technologies and new sympathies for things, laws change, etc. The needs and ticks and whatnot, and natural inclinations of the human animal, as its nature is always stays the same. And when you have a religion based on that, it is fundamental. Its tenets, its defining points must always be compatible with that. And I've looked at a lot of what people bring out or have brought out after what LaVey created, calling what they've called as Satanism after LaVey. And I've compared them, and they're always like trying to tweak it a bit so it's a bit more all-encompassing. It's a lot more humanistic, and their statement, their reasoning has always been like, well, this is outdated.
I just puked in my mouth. Go ahead.
Okay. They've always left out that the fact that the human nature component, and they've always brought as an excuse to their new version that, well, this is outdated and what they create. This is no longer this, or it's a religion based on individualism, so it would not be Satanism if I couldn't make my own. And so that's what a lot of them base that detraction off of. So
I've noticed there's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't realize you were. Go ahead.
Okay, just to finish, like social Darwinism is one of the big things that they say. Well, Satanism, or what LaVey established as Satanism was, very social Darwinistic. So it's always like, kill or be killed, eat or be eat. Screw the weak. All spoils go to the strong. The whole over-encompassing of the might is right kind of thing. They totally take that out of proportion, but they don't understand that Satanism sees man as an animal, but doesn't mean that you have to be some kind of compulsive animal. You can't accept or consider other people. You can't be charitable, and so on and so forth. So they're really short-sighted in that.
Yeah.
Even with explicit things in the works that say to the contrary, and that's what I'm going to say on that.
There's two kinds of detractors that I've noticed. There's the kind that think that the definition of Satanism needs to evolve, and then there's the kind that think we're doing it to just mock Christianity. And I often find those in the same group, in the same area, throwing the same just rabble. And it's like no, the definition does not need to evolve. The definition is what it is. We're not like Christians. We know when our religion started. We know who did it and what he said and what we wrote. We don't have 2,000 years of misprint and language, translation errors. We know exactly what was meant. And there was no mention of LaVeyan Satanism. There's no denominations. There is just Satanism. And if you're going to evolve a definition, you should at least understand what the definition is first. And LaVey was smart enough to realize that he had made something all-encompassing. You either fit this perfectly or you don't. And I don't understand what's so hard to understand about that.
Let me get this straight. So there's a man, Anton LaVey, who has devoted his entire life to studying, keyword studying, the human animal. And he has come up with a religion that he codified himself based upon his study and understanding of the human animal. And it's called Satanism. So here comes, I don't know, Joe Pseudo. He reads the Satanic Bible. He reads hopefully he's reading other literature. Hopefully. And studying
they often don't.
These things. And then he says, well, I think it can be better, and I think it can do this, because he's done so much more extensive research than LaVey. Is that pretty much what it is? These guys just come along and they're like, well, it's not for me because they don't accept me, because I think we should all go and stop, as the Church of Satan should go over there and stop them from praying.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, I'm going to start my own satanic church so we can go do that. Everybody with me? Let's get them. And they don't get it.
You're good in your approach. I mean, I definitely see where you're going, John. And
I don't see where I'm going with this. No,
where you're going with this is that they assume that they can take something that's so black and white. And they can take those black and white and they assume that those colors mix. and that gray gives them access to a new color. They can call it something else, right? I tell Jared, you've done research, into the New Testament, and how ambiguous it is, and you got those 2,000 years as opposed to 50, and we have people alive that's, were very, intimate in their relationships and correspondence.
And we know he was real.
Right. But whereas you have the New Testament, you have copies of copies of copies and very contradictory things going on, of very important events, So when it comes down to back to what you're saying, John, is that what they do is they come into it and they agree with 80% of what LaVey says. Like, yeah. No, that doesn't sound right. That sounds weird. I don't know. I'm going to make something else of this.
But they like the imagery, so they keep it.
Yeah, they cherry pick it. They make it a cafeteria religion. And the thing okay, for example, certain groups have been like, well, I love the atheistic aspect. I love the literature aspect, the first 2 books of the Satanic Bible, but we don't need the Leviathan and the Belial. We don't need that. That's just superstitious hocus pocus. That's just Harry Potter BS or whatever. And so they'll take that out, and then they'll take the first 2 books, and then they'll tweak it to update it, and then they'll create a new thing, and then they'll still package it as like a new flavor with an old label that doesn't taste the same at all. And I think that ice cream thing analogy is a good one. That was taken from some other members who have used that, and I think that's good. I like that, but that's essentially what they're doing, and is they're trying to repackage something that they feel dear and passionate about, but I don't feel they've taken the time to really understand it, and that the fact that there's an authority figure over something that I don't completely agree with. I need to challenge that because Satanism is about challenging authority, being an adversary, so that entitles me to do that. But they don't consider what I've just gone over.
I've always liked to play devil's advocate and say that the one thing that those pseudos are very good at is keeping the waters pure for us. I'm so glad that the people who are flocking there have a place to flock to, because if they were holding the same red card as me, I would just look at these people and be like, so don't even get me started. I'm just glad they're not COS members.
In some of them, I could say that some of them have read and are knowledgeable, and then they've applied and become members in the past. But the 3 words that are always great to reference and keep in mind is that time will tell. Time will tell if they really understand a philosophy, because it's a philosophy that's you go out there and you lead by example. Put
up or shut up.
What's that?
Put up or shut up.
Yeah. And talk is cheap, right?
It boggles my mind that, they. I think that if they actually read and comprehended the works of LaVey, they would never think of starting another thing and calling it Satanism. So I don't think that they've actually read anything, or their comprehension skills are left wanting.
Well, not only do they not read the material, but half of them don't even go to their so-called activist stuff. They are the keyboard warriors we mentioned. They're just their own pseudo snowflakes. So they're like 3rd generation unoriginal.
There's that. Either they don't.
How are you going to ride the coattails of somebody who's riding coattails?
Well, they don't read it, or they don't feel like it's the all-encompassing thing that they want to accept, or they're not creative enough to take some elements of different things and create something new by another name. If they did that, that would be fine.
If they didn't use the word Satanism, yeah.
Well, there's lots of things out there that people can do. There's that saying that there's nothing new under the sun, but there's always things you can do.
The Bible, actually.
It's like not whether or not they should make something else. It's like whether or not, hey, look, this religion's there. This is what it encompasses. Either I'm a part of it or I'm not. You can go out and find something else. You can be nothing, or you can take the time to create something that doesn't step on anyone else's toes.
Yeah, Jared, to strengthen what you said earlier about these pseudo groups being a filter for the church, and you're thankful that they're not members. I think the words that were written on the old website, if you guys remember this, still stands true and probably will forever. We're looking for a few outstanding individuals.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the reason why they're not a part of it.
That was from an article originally, wasn't it? I want to say there was a poster of that from the 60s or 70s where Anton LaVey had said that. I have to look back, but I could have sworn. That it could have been the Black Flame originally.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't recall.
It was associated with that image of LaVey in the center with the devil horns, and then everyone else had masks.
Yeah, and he's pointing the sword.
Yeah, that was on the old website.
Really great and stunning image, and I mean, it's true. We're looking for a few outstanding individuals.
Yeah.
And
I've had that conversation with a number of people, and I've always tried to make it clear that I don't care if my talks result in a single application being filled out or 1,000. What I want to do is clarify what Satanism is and what it isn't, and most importantly, odds are someone I'm speaking to is about Satanism in these groups is not going to apply. I found it myself. No one told me about it. But what might happen is a friend or family member might, come out of the dark closet and reveal themselves to be a Satanist, and they could have had that knee-jerk reaction if they hadn't have spoken to somebody who said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is what it is." So if it could help smooth the transition between people out there, that's really my end game.
Yeah.
If you guys recall the Devil You Know podcast's episode with
I've never heard that show.
We have Adam Roberts on, and he visited some event or something that the Pseudos were at, and he ended up talking to one of them, and he
talked to the man himself.
Yeah, I know, but he mentioned this one girl that was there that was a member of that organization. Anyway, he said to her, something about reading the Satanic Bible, and she's like, "Oh, I've never read that. Maybe I should give that a read." And I'm just like, what?
I wish I remember when Adam was talking about that on the show, and I wish that someone recorded it, and he was wise not to for exactly the reason he said. But man, if you want to talk about what he did, was he just stomped the boot on the flame of that one, and there's just unfortunately no record of it. But man, he did great. He did great.
I've had a couple online interactions with that man himself, and it was pretty funny how it ended up. The logical fallacies are pretty funny.
Oh yeah. It's gone wild.
The whole I haven't read the Satanic Bible yet, I'm a Satanist. It's that they feel that what they've established as defining tenets of their quote unquote Satanism, it's so general. I mean, you can apply those to what LaVey said, but theirs is obviously humanistic, or some of them are more humanistic or more explicitly worship, but they feel that it's different enough. Point is, they feel it's different enough from what LaVey established as actual Satanism that it's different enough so we can still put the name to it. But when they put the name to something that they call a religion, they have no choice but to go back to what was it originally called as a religion. Okay, or where was it originally established as a religion, and what were the established points of that? And we come back to 1966, and then with the actual 1969, with the actual written, putting in the book itself. So you have to do that, and that's with everything. That's just not with Satanism. That's with everything, with any philosophy you want to call yourself or religion. It's not completely exclusive to Satanism only.
Yeah, I think the underlying or the overlying moral of this episode, and you mentioned it earlier, Alder, is study, not worship. It applies to everything we've talked about. Social justice warriors not getting all the data, not getting all the information and the facts. Okay, that F word, the facts that they need. And because if they did have the facts, they probably wouldn't be acting the way they are. The snowflakes, if they just understood something a little more, and like you said, the world not being a perfect little place where everyone gets a trophy, and you're gonna,
Right.
there are words out there that might hurt you. Brush it off. They don't get that. So if they study that part and that aspect of life, they can better themselves there. And when it comes to the pseudos and posers, study, not worship. The very religion, what we say about the religion, study, not worship. I think that's the main underlying and overlying, moral of this whole episode is.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
We want to thank you for coming on, Elder. I think it was fucking awesome.
Oh yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it was great.
Great
Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, everyone, till next time.